there, dragon!
I am not a dragon. Dragons are not real. I am a person in a costume.
Well, people keep telling me that I'm not a Viking, not a real one. So it goes to show what they know.
You're not a real Viking.
Right. Shows what they know. I'm not a real Viking.
I'm glad you realized that.
After all, the word Viking wasn't really used by Vikings.
Yes, I know that, but you specifically...
Contemporaries of the Vikings use the term Viking to indicate seafaring raiders in general, but that particular group of people wasn't referred to as Vikings until the 1900s. In their own time, they were usually referred to as Norsemen or Northmen.
Sure, but you are a modern-day Minnesotan wearing a football t-shirt, a fake beard, and a plush helmet.
Critiquing my fashion choices, are you?
There is so much wrong with this, I don't even know where to start.
First of all, rude. Second of all, no, I know that it's pretty clear that Vikings didn't wear horned helmets into battle, but it's possible that they wore them for other reasons, special occasions, ceremonies. We're going to watch How to Train Your Dragon. And I'm dressing up. The horns are plush. If I do go into battle, I won't harm my fellow Vikings.
That's very considerate of you. What about the t-shirt?
It's too hot for long sleeves.
And the beard?
It's supposed to get cold later.
What we refer to as the Viking period spanned from the late 8th century to the late 11th century. It's marked by two events: the sack of Lindisfarne, a monastery in the Isle of Britain, in 793, and the Battle of Stamford Bridge in 1066, during the Norman conquest of Britain. That said, evidence of Norse raids starts far earlier, and the last recorded Viking raid in Scotland didn't take place until as late as 1240. There are a variety of reasons why Norsemen might have put so much energy into raids and expansion during this period. There might have been a population boom leading to a shortage of resources. Vikings might have been lured by the wealth of southern cities as trade routes pushed farther north. Vikings might have been taking revenge for Christian attacks on non-Christian groups. There may have been political motivations, as new leaders emerged or didn't emerge across Europe. Or it might just have been that the sailing technology they used made them good at it.
Can you explain the boat?
Well, I know it's not very traditional. It's not built of the right kind of wood, and it's not clinker built, and I didn't caulk it with animal hair or fur or anything, but it takes an awful lot of work to make one of those properly, and it's so much faster to just buy a fishing boat.
Don't you need a longboat with a sail and a lot of oars?
Why? I don't have a crew. I just need to catch some fish. If there's any pillaging to be done, someone else will bring the boat. Your average Carl isn't just going to have a huge boat like that sitting around. Boats are expensive.
Oh, sure, I guess. And, why are we in a field?
Because I'm a farmer.
What?
Well, lots of Vikings were farmers. Sure, it wasn't easy. The soil was rocky and the climate was cold, but Vikings, well, they raised rye and barley and vegetables and sheep and goats and cows and poultry.
No, I mean, how does that explain why you have a boat in a field.
Oh, it's always faster to travel by boat than by land. I suppose you wouldn't know that since dragons can fly everywhere.
Sure. Okay.
Viking boats were definitely key in the success of Viking raids. Vikings crafted all kinds of boats, small rowboats or sailboats for fishing, larger, solid cargo vessels, and enormous, elegant ships built for royalty. All were clinker-built, which means that the wood planks of the hull overlapped a bit. At that time, Northern Europe had lots of forests, so wood wasn't hard to find. It still took a lot of time and skill to build boats, though. The most famous Viking ship style is, of course, the longboat. They were around 60 feet or more in length, and they carried crews of around 30 Vikings. Combining a removable mast and sail with oars made the ships versatile. Longboats also don't sink deeply into the water, which let Vikings come ashore at places other people might not expect. Vikings could land, check to see if they've found a good place to raid, and easily go elsewhere if not. This let them surprise their targets. Unsurprisingly, Vikings considered boats pretty important. We've found royalty buried with their boats, and thousands of graves in Scandinavia are marked with stones that mimic the shape of boats.
So, how to train your dragon? I've been looking forward to this. It's so cute that Vikings have Scottish accents.
Yeah, I've been wondering about that. What is with your fake British accent?
Oh, I stole it from the monks at Linsfrane Monastery during that big raid that kicked off the Viking era. They had a lot of really nicely illustrated books.
That's not how this works.
No, all right. I just think it's fun.
Okay then.
Besides, Cressida Cowell is from England.
Okay.
Our Viking mentioned average Carls. This isn't a given name like your average Joe. Carls were one of 3 groups within Viking society: the Jarls, the Carls, and the Thralls. Jarls were the nobility, the ruling class. They were chieftains and controlled large areas of land. Carls were free peasants. They could own and bear weapons and were allowed to speak at the Thing, where laws and justice were decided. Most of them were farmers. Some were merchants or artisans. Some even owned land of their own and leased it out to others. Carls also went on raids. Some planted their fields in the spring, went a Viking, and returned in the fall to harvest the crops. And when they went raiding, they didn't just steal goods. Thralls were enslaved people, usually stolen from their homes during raids. They were forced to work on farms or in workshops, and they were often sold to other groups as a commodity. There was some mobility between classes, but the children of thralls were also considered thralls.
Why are you looking at me like that?
It's just looking at your outfit reminds me of how many times Minnesotans have presented fakes as actual historical artifacts.
That's hardly limited to Minnesotans. But go on.
Okay, well, the big one is the Kensington Runestone. There's even still some controversy over whether it's actually real or not, even though pretty much all the evidence indicates that it was a fake.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. What do you think they did? Did the guy who found it carve it, or did someone else do the carving, or did he really think he found a centuries-old rune stone?
I don't know, it's just frustrating. And then there were the other runes that some U of M students carved near there in the 80s and didn't fess up to until 2001 when someone had the carving shipped off to be analyzed.
That doesn't seem so bad. People like to carve stuff, especially with interesting symbols. If they're vandalizing something, that's a different story. But people have left their marks like that for thousands of years.
They said it was an experiment to see if people would believe it was real.
That sounds like a pretty impressive college prank. Didn't other scientists say that it was pretty clear that the runes weren't that old from the start?
It just bothers me. I don't like pranks. And what about the farmer who tried to who carved a rune stone by Elbow Lake? He definitely tried to convince everyone it was real.
That was a pretty good prank, too.
There are 3 different sets of runes here. The first 2, younger Futhark, were used during Viking times. They have variations, long branch on the top and short twig in the middle. They're simplified versions of the older Elder Futhark on the bottom. Do you see anything odd about them? They use mostly vertical and angled or curved lines, but not many horizontal lines. That's because they were probably designed to be written on wooden objects, or horizontal lines could be confused with the wood grain, or could split the wood. According to Norse mythology, the god Odin learned the magic of runes after hanging himself for 9 days impaled on a spear from the World Tree. That might be the reason that, before Viking times, runes only seemed to be used to carve names or magic charms on objects. More people seem to be willing to write them by the time Norsemen went to Viking because we found "Sven was here" sorts of graffiti. Do these symbols look familiar? Runes are used in a lot of fantasy stories and games, and you've almost definitely seen the Bluetooth logo. It combines 2 runes used for the initials of the Danish king Harald Bluetooth. His name was chosen because Bluetooth united the different Danish tribes and now unites different electronics. When runes are combined like this, they're called bind runes.
So, did you bring any movie snacks?
Oh, I've got sweet tarts and fizzy water.
Why not something more thematic?
What, like unleavened rye bread?
Like mead.
I'm not sure if you're actually allowed to have that here.
That's okay. It's actually apple juice. You probably complain about mead being historically inaccurate, too.
What? Isn't that a Norseman thing?
Maybe. Mead and honey feature pretty prominently in stories about Vikings, but many of those were written after the Viking times. Beekeeping was practiced during Viking times, but we also know that Scandinavia wasn't a great location to raise bees during that time. There's not a lot of evidence either way. Maybe there were wild bee populations that handled the cold well. Maybe Vikings had great beekeeping skills. Not surprising. Maybe they just traded honey or stole it from southern places. We just don't really know.
All this uncertainty drives me nuts. All this already happened. It is what it is. Can't we just know what history is and not change it?
It's not that history changes. Our understanding changes. History is hard. It's easy to get confused because you don't have all the information. And you never can have all the information. Lots of everyday items decompose and disappear, like pretty much everything associated with beekeeping and boats. Even when we have good written accounts of events, we have to remember that everyone puts their own bias into their writing, and humans aren't all that great about remembering events accurately.
History is written by the victors.
And even their books mold and rot.
Oh, that's depressing.
But sometimes we find things that survived especially well, like artifacts buried in peat bogs or sealed away in caves or hidden in someone's attic, and we can get a little more insight.
And then we'll put them in a new digital format that can't be read in 20 years.
You are very pessimistic tonight.
I found an old floppy disk from middle school, and my computer doesn't even recognize any of the file types.
Your library may be able to help.
Where do you think I found a USB floppy drive?
Huh. Want some mead?
No, I don't really like apple juice. Thanks, though.
There are a lot of other interesting things we could discuss about Vikings. For instance, they may have invented and certainly developed skis and ice skates. Some Vikings took their whole families with them when they went raiding. Vikings had trade networks that extended throughout Europe, Asia, and the Far East. And we keep learning new things. We recently discovered that what we thought was the grave of a male Viking warrior was actually the grave of a female warrior. Why not do some research of your own? Most books about Vikings can be found in 948, the call number for Scandinavia.
Okay, before the movie starts, I gotta ask, what is with all the dragons?
What dragons? Obviously, these aren't dragons. Dragons aren't real.
Well, yes, but...
These are tribbles.
What?
Okay, I think that's enough.
Good.